think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Education Summit. We're very thrilled to have you with us here today. My name is Sam, and I'm on the academics team here at Course Hero, and it is my great pleasure to introduce our next speakers, Cara Ruggiero and Victoria Gallardi. Cara is a learning experience strategist at Berkeley College with over 10 years of experience in teaching and school administration. She specializes in curriculum development that emphasizes creativity and collaboration, and she consults with faculty to integrate student-centered approaches for 21st century skills. Victoria is a senior learning experience strategist, also at Berkeley College, with over 6 years of experience in faculty development and curriculum design. She collaborates with faculty in course design projects and leads workshops that promote forward-thinking learning design. Before we dive into the session today, just a few housekeeping notes. If you need captions, you can access them by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We also encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A box and to upvote your favorite questions, and we'll do our best to address as many as possible at the end of the session. If you want access to the slides from today's presentation, those will be shared with all registrants later next week, along with a recording of the session. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Cara and Victoria to the virtual stage with our session, Creating Student-Directed Online Learning Experiences. Cara and Victoria, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Sam. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Cara Ruggiero, and I'm going to be kicking off our talk today, creating student-directed online learning experiences. We hope to open up the floor to share strategies and create really a database of information that we can all pull and draw from. So we really want to hear your input as well, and we're going to share our story in reimagining one of our key courses in our course schedule at Berkeley College. So very quickly, we've been introduced already, so we won't linger here, but I'm Cara.
And I'm Victoria. Hello.
And we, as was mentioned, we work primarily in our college's teaching and learning department, where we support faculty. We do professional development in teaching and learning, but we also, as part of our job, teach. So, which is our favorite part, because we get to experiment and try new things and look for different ways that we can recommend different strategies for faculty. So we're going to talk through that experience from this past year and share some of the strategies we tried and what happened after we tried them. So, like I mentioned before, we want to try to spark some discussion about some student-centered active learning strategies. So while we're going to give you our story, and we would love to hear from you and for you to share your strategies and experiences in this type of learning in the chat, as well as your questions as to how to implement these different strategies or different ideas that you have on how it could apply to your own courses or classes, if you're in the K-12 space too. So look out for those questions. We're going to target them throughout, and please feel free to share whenever. So this is the map, I guess, of the presentation, which begins with finding our map. So establishing what we wanted to do with our course and looking for answers and how to do it. We'll take you through the world we built. We have a little clue here with our themed presentation in what angle we might have taken in this way. We're going to investigate some solutions that we tried to implement to achieve the goals that we had set for our course. And then we're going to talk about the lessons we learned in using those strategies with students. So first, we'll give you some background on the course that we've been tasked with teaching this semester. So Victoria and I both teach our college's first year experience course, which is a course that many of our students, all of our students, every degree program requires as one of the first courses that the students take to acclimate them to the college experience. So these are the course objectives that we are tasked with. I mean, largely we're fortunate enough that our school lets us experiment a bit with the course design based on the objectives, as long as we achieve those objectives. So begins with, it's a problem and solution oriented course. It begins with identifying challenges, looking at different skills and strategies to help overcome those challenges, creating an action plan to apply those strategies and overcome those challenges, and then critically reflect, evaluate the progress they've made at the end of the course. So as we're looking at these objectives, we notice that these build upon each other. And we wanted to capitalize on that element. We wanted to have that clear thread throughout the course. So that was one thing that we wanted to work on and have students view it as a journey of self-development, both in and outside of college. So we wanted it to have applicability everywhere. And it could also mirror that of other courses. So you just need to sub into specific content, identify problems and issues, research solutions, tools, and then create a plan to implement or apply. So when we imagined this course, we had this framework and we wanted to achieve three things. The first is we wanted to inspire connections for students. And this means connections to their own experiences, connections to their prior knowledge or their assumptions with what their college experience was going to be like. But we also wanted them to inspire some connections within the class. We wanted them to create a network. And it's worth mentioning that this course that we taught was completely online asynchronous. So those who have done that know how difficult it is to cultivate those connections and create that community. So that was a big goal for us. And then we also, similar to what the keynote was speaking about, we wanted to create connections outside of the course for our students as well. And how we can do that within the resources available to them at Berkeley College itself, and maybe resources available to them outside of that network. The second thing is we wanted to inspire engagement. We wanted the students to be engaged in the online environment. Again, a constant struggle for those teaching online asynchronous courses. And we wanted to create the online space where they can interact and bond with each other more freely, which provided a challenge in terms of the weekly discussion board structure that normally was happening. And we wanted to engineer activities where students will be encouraged to think deeply and critically about actions and reactions, as well as be observant to things going on around them. So we wanted them to view their experiences through a new lens. And then the last thing is we wanted it to be exciting, not only for the students, we wanted it to be exciting for us. We wanted to be excited to get submissions and excited to see what their thoughts were about what was going on. And we wanted students to be excited to try things and get the reactions and responses that they would. So these are three goals that I know a lot of instructors hold with their courses. So I want to open up the floor for our first question. In the chat, if you could share one way you inspire connections, engagement, and or excitement in your courses. And we'll pick some up as we move on in the presentation to highlight. So I'll give you a sec to orient to that. So one way you inspire connections, I would do in a daily check-in. We love the like perpetual check-in survey with students. Definitely a great one. So you can keep going in there. 10 things to know about me. I love that.
Oh, word in emoji clouds.
Oh, I love emoji cloud.
We're big on emojis.
You'll see, you'll notice in a minute. Brief writing prompt. Entire conversations in the margin. I love a back and forth like feedback structure in the margin.
Oh, I've done the 2 truths and 1 non-truth. Yeah.
2 peers information temperature checks. Yep, totally. Oh, a drawing of each other. That's so cool.
Oh, that's like a twist on interviewing and then presenting the other person. I like that. Cool.
Online course, do out field work, weekly discussion, post various topics, interacts with the cohort. Yep. Oh, and the check-in meeting. I bet you those are super, super helpful for students. All right, that you can keep going with that. We'll keep going along, but please keep continuing to add video notes. Yeah. While doing something normal. I love that. Okay, so while you're continuing to add, because this is a great bank of information, we had a few challenges that we needed to resolve in order to get our head on straight with what we were going to do. So the first thing was what skills. So we wanted to help students develop skills that are going to serve them during their college experience. It's worth mentioning that our student population is a non-traditional student population. A lot of our students are on average late 20s, early 30s. Many are returning to school with after some time or after a hiatus of some kind. Most had children. I think almost all of maybe only a couple of our students didn't have children or families. And almost all of them were employed full-time. outside of their course load. Some were full-time students and full-time employees, which was wild. And then many of our students are also first-generation college students. So that was the population that we wanted to serve. So we were thinking about what skills can we highlight for these students that are going to be the most valuable for them in this moment? And that leads into the next question, which is what impact. So what skills should we then prioritize within that list that would be most impactful for these students at this point in their college journey? And then from there, once we've identified those skills, we want to determine what they could do to practice those skills. So what actions in the real world could they do to practice and reflect upon these skills? And then the last question is, how can we encourage critical thinking and highlight the relevance and usefulness of these skills and within this learning process? So we sat and we grappled with those questions, and we also had to overcome a bit of a challenge in terms of limited technological resources. We use an online LMS system. We use Canvas LMS. That's our system at the school. So we had all the things available to us in Canvas to use. But outside of that, in terms of educational technology, we have a very limited list of approved tech that we could pull from. So it was basically Canvas and Microsoft 365 Office suite was our working toolkit that we could incorporate. So that kind of threw a wrench in a bit of what we wanted to do, but we were able to be creative in that way. So after we've done this and after we sat with these questions, we came up with this instructional toolkit of strategies that we wanted to try to see if they would inspire those connections, engagement, and excitement within our students. So the first thing we wanted to do was put the students in the center of the story as the main character within an overarching narrative. We wanted to give them a familiar structure to work within, and we wanted to add a bit of whimsy and color to the experience, which you'll see how we did that in a minute. Second, we wanted to build assignments that encourage practice in the wild. Or active application of learning accompanied by reflections to connect learning experiences with resources and then plan to the future. And then third, we wanted this to be up to the student. We wanted to put them in the driver's seat as the main character in this narrative, and follow their lead based on their unique experiences that they were coming with. I mentioned before, we have a host of prior experience coming to us in our student populations. We wanted to, one, make the activities as valuable and relevant to them as we could. And then two, we wanted to have a way where they can share their experience with each other and help that develop the learning community. So our next question, if you're ready for it, in the chat, if you have tried any of those strategies, and I'll back it up in a minute so you can look at them again. Have you tried any of those? And then how have your students reacted to trying these strategies in the toolkit? So again, the strategies were an overarching narrative, authentic application and reflection, and then student choice. So please drop that in the chat to add to our data bank. Positive reactions to student choice, as often as I can, yep. Reflection, many discussion posts, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Tesneem wrote in the chat. Sometimes it works, and sometimes like decision fatigue is real.
Yeah, definitely structured choice is I think the happy medium, not too much.
Mm-hmm. Lots for reflection, yeah. A lot of metacognitive thinking happening.
Mm.
All right, please continue to keep dropping them in. But we'll take you through what we ended up doing. So I'm going to pass it over to Victoria to walk you through our world.
All right, so with our instructional toolkit in hand, we started to envision the course. And the story behind our course is a classic, The Hero's Journey. It's a narrative pattern that we're all probably pretty familiar with. I see House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, yeah. That involves a heroic character who receives a call to adventure, faces challenges, gains wisdom, and returns home transformed. We liked the idea of using this narrative because it really does fit the circumstances of first-year students. They are braving a new world and learning to be the hero in their own story. With this guiding structure, we gave students their noble purpose for this adventure: to develop their academic skills, communication skills, and self-awareness to help them overcome obstacles faced during their college experience. All right, so now let's leave the ordinary world behind and venture forth to Berkeley Kingdom, a place where heroes quest to the farthest corners of the kingdom to practice critical skills and convene in the town square for support and guidance. They plan a course of action, combat enemies of progress, meet allies, and face tests of their skills with the goal of realizing personal growth and sharing their insights with others. All right, so the course storyline follows this kind of progression. It's punctuated by 3 checkpoints, which are basically the summative assessments in the course, and then other journey activities throughout as the formative assessments. The storyline focuses on core skills that build on one another. So planning quests to go on, applying skills during quests, creating an action plan for improvement, implementing that plan in the face of common obstacles, and finally, evaluating their journey progress. So we'll run through these plot points. For checkpoint 1, to integrate some metacognitive planning, students needed to read through and choose the quests that interested them the most. We gave some parameters, restrictions on the type of quests they could attempt per week, but mostly left it up to students to choose the ones that fit into their lifestyle and into their areas of interest. We also wanted students to identify challenges they could face during their college experience that would be directly impacted by the skills the quests develop. Students went on quests after this, once they kind of did that first checkpoint, to what we called the cornerstones of Berkeley Kingdom. And these were places characterized by the type of skills students would practice there. These are the skills we consider to be the most directly impactful for their college experience in particular. So we had a section of quests for inner light, which gave students opportunities to practice self-awareness such as reflection, introspection, and building confidence. Quests for thoughtful expression challenged students to communicate in different contexts with different goals. Quests for scholarly prowess asked students to try different study techniques, engage in problem solving and critical thinking activities, and tap into their creativity. So once they complete 6 of those quests, we gave them a handful to choose from. They reached checkpoint 2, where students reflected on their experience up to that point and chose 1 quest to continue to practice. They set specific, time-bound, and measurable goals and prepared for obstacles along the way. They then implemented their action plan for the next 4 weeks of the course. All right,
So
and I'll
during
pass it
those-
over to Kara.
Thanks. So during those 4 weeks, so they're implementing their action plan. And so during those 4 weeks, we had them address some obstacles that they had predicted. So when they created their action plan, they predicted some obstacles. We had predicted some obstacles, and we put some more active application assignments that connected to those obstacles that they would face. So for example, an enemy they might face is stress, which many of them identified as probably the culprit of derailing their action plan. So within that activity, they explored stress response in the brain, created a plan for stress relief in the short term and the long term, in addition to looking at motivation and what informed motivation and what to do to overcome lack of motivation. They met allies like habit formation, where they explored creating a habit loop and identifying a habit that they wanted to replace with a more productive habit. And then we played a bit with mindset and perception, looking at what they see versus what reality and how people have different perspectives, as well as academic integrity, which would be covered in a first-year experience course. So we wanted to include that as well. So we wanted them to engage with universal struggles and strategies that they connect to regardless of their individual experiences. So they've implemented their their action plans for 4 weeks. And then at the end of a course, or the course was 15-week, 3-credit course, they evaluated their progress and their action plan after those 4 weeks and engaged in an overall reflection of the entire experience. And then there was a follow-up creative expression assignment. We called it the Hero's Handbook, and we gave them options as to what kind of product they could choose to basically sum up their experience. And it did not disappoint. We got poems, we got t-shirts, we got song playlists, which actually were great song playlists that we can use now. Short stories, infographics, PowerPoint presentations, a lot of different ways to represent their experience. And we explained that this would be like, how can you explain this to somebody coming into the course? How would you prepare them for this experience? Okay. And then, so those are the main assignments within the course. So within that as well, remember, we wanted to create some connection and we wanted students to be engaged with each other. So we explored how we could do that in a creative way. And we came up with the idea of the town square. So we wanted to use it as more of a forum structure, and we'll show you kind of how we did that in a bit, than a traditional weekly discussion board. And many of the topics that students could engage with were questions based in the 3 focus areas. So self-awareness, communication, and scholarly prowess or academic skills, as well as things just for fun to get conversations going. And then additionally, we solicited the students for questions within those areas at the beginning of the course, and we sprinkled those in through along the way as we went. So we walked you through generally what we did, and we're going to return back to our toolkit. These 3 student-centered practices to emphasize relevance, encourage engagement and connection, add some excitement. So we'll take you through how each of these factored into the course. So I'll pass that over to Victoria.
Thank you. All right. So the overarching narrative, I have 2 things to highlight that I think contributed to the success of using the narrative across the course. So the first assignment in the course was a multimedia start of learning quiz. Students watched videos about the course and then responded to questions. And it served 3 main purposes for us. One was to get to know the students, our heroes, as individuals. It also was for orienting students to the adventure, the course's purpose, timeline, and requirements. And then the final thing was we really wanted to raise awareness of useful college resources, that network that students can start to build. And this really, like for us, becomes the supplies that can support them on their journey. This was a way for us basically to bring our syllabus to life, a document that students too often do neglect to refer to. And we did it through audio visuals, which I think was really helpful. But the true benefit was being able to bring students into a familiar narrative right at the beginning of the course so that they understand why the hell this place looks like, you know, a medieval Game of Thrones kind of a thing. And it was also an opportunity for us to assess students' understanding of what's ahead of them and provide personalized connection and support from the very start. All right, so I bet you all thought we wouldn't talk about AI. Well, hot topic as it is, we definitely eagerly relied on Canva's magic media tool because the visuals are really the glue that holds this whole building a narrative thing together in the online environment. So all the visuals you see here are images that we use throughout the course to kind of build our narrative. And they were all done using Canva's magic AI tool, image generator. You can kind of see here, all you really have to do, it's super simple, is just put in a few descriptive words of what you're kind of looking for, and it'll give you some options to choose from. So you kind of have to play around with what you're describing, but I mean, we really liked the results. So I think it was a big win for developing the narrative.
And this was one of the things that we like to highlight for that can be used in any environment. Like you can take these and have them be a bulletin board in a classroom or a backdrop in your Zoom. I think Victoria used it as her like
My
office
Zoom, yeah.
hours Zoom background, which was super fun. So it could be just color the virtual environment, color, make it more immersive. Okay.
All right, so in the chat, let us know how you have used AI in your courses. I know it's a tool that's, kind of fresh for everybody in the last year or two, but I can imagine that we're all using it in crazy interesting ways out there.
Case studies, yeah.
Oh yeah,
We do
case
that a lot
studies.
with faculty. We help them
Because they can be
that's
time consuming to find, yeah.
some you
Oh,
really have to, oh, go ahead.
create social media assignments. That's interesting.
Right, outcomes, yeah. Course objectives, big
The
help.
most tedious part, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people
Oh,
still
compare
learning,
writing
definitely.
samples. That's interesting. Create
Evaluate how useful
scenarios.
proposal is, yeah. Make quizzes, yep. Create questions.
Yeah, really good at generating content. Yeah. And I see a mix in the chat too of people using it to create things for their courses, but then also having their students use it in the courses. Nice.
All right. So we'll keep going. Feel free to keep adding.
All right, so at the end of the course, we did survey our students on their reaction to using the narrative, and the majority of student feedback we got indicated that it was really effective for them. You can see along the top, actually, the banner there, Shrek, Frodo, Moana, those were all things that students actually told us in that start of learning quiz that we gave them to help them connect with the hero's journey. We asked them, like, what's an example that you know of this kind of narrative? And so those were all the ones that they gave us. It was kind of fun to see what they connect with there. And so some of the things that they had to say revolved around engagement, feeling like it was relatable to them and that it was fun. One of the students said, I think when you establish a relation between something you already know and something you are about to experience, it gives you a perspective that what you are going to do is not that unknown. So it can be a relaxer. That was so nice to get that feedback. Another student said, it's so easy to brush classes like this off because you think that you already know what to do and how to handle yourself, or that you won't learn any new information. But it was nice to have a class that was fun while still teaching me life skills. We hear that a lot, first year experience courses, like, why am I in this? This has nothing to do with my degree. And then we did get this class definitely, quote, is not like any other class I've taken. And the student didn't elaborate further, so take that for what you will.
Okay, I'm going to take it back. So this is the next strategy is our application and reflection. So the way that we did this is we took those three areas, like we mentioned before, self-awareness, communication, and academic skills, and we populated them with skills that we thought would be most impactful and most relevant for our population of non-traditional students. So we took observations from previous versions of the course that we've taught, field research, information from the consultations with faculty, to isolate those skills in each category that we thought that would serve the students the most at this point. And then from there, we wanted to design activities that would give students the opportunity to engage with these skills thoughtfully and try them out in a real context. So you see, we focused on self-confidence and courage, resilience. Time management is always a big one. But we wanted to add in energy management too as a concept, self-reflection, how to effectively reflect. And we gave them a lot of practice with that. Collaboration, networking, social skills, nonverbal communication, and then study skills, critical thinking, creativity, and then media literacy were the ones that we narrowed it down to. So when we built the quest, we wanted to scaffold the experience so that the students were not going in completely unprepared and that they would get the most out of their quest experience. So first we started with some prep. We had curated lists of resources and or smaller activities to prepare them for the overall action of the quest itself. And they had to consume X amount, and we'll talk about that when we get to student choice a little bit more. Then they engaged in the quest itself, which was always an activity that they had to put into practice outside the context of the course, and had to do it with applying some of the strategies in the resources that they read or watched or listened to or what have you. And then finally, they would submit the tributes, which were submission quizzes or reflective quizzes that they would explicitly connect the experience with the resources and then evaluate it for their personal value and think about the future. Think about how they can apply this again or what they would do differently if they tried it again. So the way that we built this is we used Canvas LMS, and we built a lot of the quizzes in either classic quizzes or new quizzes, depending on what we wanted to do. And those were the submissions for the quest. Okay, so here's some examples of the quest. And like I said, we made 12. These are just one example of each, but you'll kind of get the idea of what we were asking them to do. So the first is self-awareness. So this one was a popular one. It was the Uncharted Realms quest, which was courage and resilience, and it required students to go outside of their comfort zone at least 3 times. And we gave them a list of potential things that they could do that would be outside of their comfort zone, and they could choose from that list. The second one was for communication. We had a collaboration challenge, and this one we wanted to directly connect it to a support network in the college. So we had them engage with one of our services, either our Center for Academic Success tutoring, our student wellness, our career services, student development, whatever it was, whatever piqued their interest the most. We gave them something to go and talk to those people about, and then come back and reflect on that experience and how they could help support them throughout the rest of their journey. And then for scholarly prowess or academic skills, we did one for seeking knowledge, which was active learning, study skills strategies, basically. So we gave them 3 recommendations of different strategies they could use to study. They tried all 3, reflected on which one was valuable to them, and what helped them retain the most information or help them learn the information the best. So the way that we tried to do this is we wanted to address the question of the when will I need this? So in doing that, we can apply this to specific content, connecting with current events or advocacy work, any way to apply specific skills and knowledge outside the context of the course, which was kind of the background feeder of what we were trying to do. All right, so once they did the thing, they had to tell us about it, basically. So a lot of our tributes were storytelling and open-ended questions. What happened? Give us some specifics, give us some details. We wanted to encourage a reflective routine and self-assessment. Were you successful in doing what you wanted to do? Basically to move forward that continuous growth and improvement message that we wanted to ingrain throughout the course. And we wanted to emphasize how these skills can apply outside of the course. And since students were applying what they learned in their lives, the reflection quizzes became a great way for them to recount and assess their own learning. Ton of open-ended questions, and then that direct connection to resources, so they can see exactly where it fits into how they can apply these skills. So that structure of prep, do, and reflect, we wanted to encourage self-regulation within there, and then embed some metacognitive thinking with monitoring and evaluation consistently throughout everything they needed to do. And one bonus we noticed, when we noticed this after, we had very little question of whether or not the students were doing authentic work in the structure, mostly because a lot of what they were telling us were specific experiences, specific actions that happened, events that happened in their life, reactions people had, and then their own thinking about it. And that was the highlight of it for us. So it was really focused on their own thinking, and there was no criteria in terms of right, wrong. They knew that even if they didn't succeed in the quest, they would still get credit for it. So that was really helpful in just our mindset as we were teaching. Okay. So here are some reactions. So I'm not going to read the quotes on the slide. So but I'll give you kind of a summary of what we heard from students from doing these quests. So for the self-awareness quests, we saw students overall found an increase in confidence. They started viewing their capabilities differently, especially through that comfort zone quest. They didn't think they'd be able to do it, and then they did it, and it completely helped them reimagine who they were and what their skills were, which was really cool to see in real time. Next one for communication. Again, we saw students have increase in empathy in understanding different perspectives and an open-mindedness and acknowledging those perspectives, and a bit more self-efficacy in their communication skills. Especially we had one where they had to have a conversation with someone, and it could be so asking for advice or asking for help with a problem, or having a difficult conversation in that way. And that especially got them thinking, oh, I am able to do this. And then for the scholarly prowess or academic skills, we saw strategies for studying and reflection, how to best study for them. Many students like, I've never heard of this way of studying, and it completely changed the way I approach my study habits. Especially the Pomodoro technique was a big hit with students kind of across the board. So we saw them basically in general just reimagining the way that they're viewing their capabilities and viewing the way that they can do things within the context of college and then outside of college, which was really cool to see. And then overall with the quests, they recognized that these things had a place in their life. They saw the relevance. They thought it was fun, interesting, didn't lose interest. I love that the quest forced me to actually step back and think about what I was doing, which was nice to see too. Applied every quest in not only my academic life, personal life. So we are seeing those cross connections between where it is relevant for them, and then helping me do better with my classes and my personal life. So we're, again, the broadened relevance, which is really great. Okay, I'll pass it back to Victoria.
All right, so rounding this out with our last instructional strategy that we use for the core student choice, many students did report to us that they appreciated being given choices. So we did choice in a couple of different ways. It's kind of come up throughout the presentation, but first, from the very beginning, students had the choice of the quests they would go on. They previewed the quest assignments and chose the week in which they'd actually complete each quest as well, which really forced them to plan ahead. They knew what was coming so they could be ready for it. And so this planning worksheet, the snapshot that we've got here, this was something that we used in the course to help them plan out what they were going to do and when they were going to do it. Really became a great learning tool. And then prep it for the quests. We gave lots of choices here as well. Before students embarked on the quests, we wanted them to feel prepared by learning from resources that really emphasize applicable concepts and strategies. So anytime we asked students to engage with resources, they had a structured bank to choose from with articles, podcasts, graphics, and video options.
So this was another one where this could apply to any course structure, any course level really, because especially in like the K-12 environment, providing this variety of sources, different media types, it really helps with applying universal design for learning. It gives students a way to engage with the resources in their preference. It gives them exposure to a variety of formats of information. It gives them exposure to different text complexities, gives more unique perspectives. So we really like doing this, and it allowed the students to consume the information in a way that was most applicable to where they were in their life and the time constraints they had and their responsibilities, etc.
Another area for choice was in the town square, our open discussion forum. We knew we wanted this to be student driven. So at the very beginning of the course, students filled out another worksheet to generate questions that they have about the 3 main skill areas that they would be learning about. And getting their questions up front gave us a really good understanding of what they were interested in. So we used a selection of their questions as discussion prompts throughout the course. And not only did this give students, essentially students creating the choice themselves, but it also allowed us to use questions we know they would be motivated to actually talk about. And it did take some of the burden off of us as well to create discussions, which was a nice perk.
Yeah, and there's ways to implement this too in a live environment. Can be expanded to having students host and facilitate discussions based on questions that they developed. Can be done in a small group, large group, a discussion structure like a fishbowl. It could also be applied. I know faculty who use this for test creation. They have the students generate questions based on the content, and then they use those questions to inform the test that they get. So, or create study guides and things like that. So it's a really great strategy.
All right, and then students had even more choice in using the town square in that they had options as to how and when to contribute to the discussion boards, which boards to post to. We didn't have any limit for posting. And then additional boards were also added to incorporate their own questions and the new activities for the course. So it was a really dynamic environment where there was a lot of choice. And when we asked students for their feedback on the town square design, there were really just a few common threads throughout their responses that involved them hitting on the fact that it was customizable, that they enjoyed having that choice of what to actually talk about, and that they enjoyed the community. It was really nice to hear students say, quote, "I wasn't alone." I didn't feel like I was alone in my life problems. It's really great feedback to hear.
Okay, so we're running up on time, so we'll take you very briefly. Not everything worked the way that we wanted to, definitely. So we wanted to take you through some of the things that we want to consider the next time we would teach this course and what changes we might make. So the first is we hear a lot from faculty that getting students to engage with feedback is a challenge. So I think one of the main reasons why is because it requires student persistence and additional effort. So a big takeaway for us is we wanted to encourage persistence. So we thought about how our expectations for revisions and feedback can influence their perception of their abilities and mindset toward growth. So we changed up our expectations for revision. So rather than requiring full resubmissions or anything like that, we had a kind of a back and forth conversation with students in submission comments and annotated comments. And we accepted those answers as proof of revision. So a lot of the questions that we had were really just asking to go deeper and more specific into their responses or go deeper into their critical thinking and their reflections. So we tried to pull that out of them with open-ended questions and personalized questions to get them thinking in that way. And to do that, we wanted to turn to a labor-based grading system, which we think really applied well to this type of course. So I want to give credit to Kelly Spoon of San Diego Miramar College, who posted, and this is linked in our slides for when we share them, a system of setting up, we used Canvas again, Canvas so that it has that we wanted a 3-tiered grading system. So the first thing that we wanted to do was give a measure of complete, which was success. We wanted to give a measure of you're in there, we wanted to give them credit for the work that they had done, but it may not have been complete. And then we wanted to have our language be where it supported the process. So we settled on success almost, which would inspire a revision, and then not yet, which would be you can still submit, but you don't have anything there at the moment.
Right, and
Right,
then
and pass it to Victoria.
the fact that active learning takes time and effort for students to adjust to. So we noticed a resistance toward reflective thinking practices, especially with some student responses to prompts being surface level or lacking thoughtful introspection. And so I think going forward, we would adjust by asking more targeted questions that guide students toward deeper reflection. We also recognized, as I think Kara said at the top, that many of our students were juggling competing responsibilities and priorities in their lives. So because of that, there were definitely constraints on students' available bandwidth. But this is where flexibility became a significant benefit to us. I can just say, like, when 2 of my students contacted me about personal issues impacting their time and attention, I made it clear that they would not be penalized for late work. And ultimately, I want them to do the work, whether it's late or not. That's the important thing. So the door remained open for them to succeed. And I would say that both Kara and I did have students who, without that flexibility, may have struggled to pass the course. The other consideration here is the open forum kind of design. It's worth considering your class size for this, because generally speaking, this style probably works best with larger classes. Having multiple forums open at once could split students' attention, leading to less interactions per forum if the class size is relatively small. So that rounds out our presentation today. Please put in the chat or the Q&A box, I know Sam was saying, what questions do you have about implementing these strategies based on your course and students?
Yep. Go ahead and add
We
that.
had
And
a
then here, oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well,
No, go
here's
ahead.
our emails are on this slide. We love talking about this. This was a lot of fun for us to do, and we would love to help others who are interested in doing it. So please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk about it.
Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Victoria. We just had a few questions in the Q&A box. We are coming up on time, but we'll see if we can address these here. If not, we'll follow up with the speakers after Summit, and we'll follow up with your questions later. How much time did you have to develop this course from initial idea to inaugural offering?
I would say, when did we start doing it? October?
I
landed on
want to
the
say we
narrative?
started
Yeah.
around September, October, and then we ended up teaching it in January. And I will say that because we're not full-time faculty, we did have kind of that extra time within our own roles, our 9-to-5 roles essentially, to experiment with design and development.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Shelby's asking, can you share examples of quests and what software tools did you use to build your course?
We really work, I mean, we used Canva for the images really, but a lot of our design work was in Canvas. We did a lot with HTML editing in Canvas, in the rich content editor. But a lot of what we did could probably be replicated just using the tools that are there. And we used new quizzes and classic quizzes for a lot of the submissions that we did. And then some examples that we'd be happy to share the examples of the quests. A lot of them are pretty extensive. So if
Okay.
you would like the full list, I encourage anyone to reach out to us on our email. We'll be happy to share them.
Great. Yeah, that maybe can be a resource that we share as a follow-up for
Mhm.
Summit. Cool. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Kara and Victoria, for sharing. As a reminder, we'll share the slides and the recording next week. And for those of you who can still stay with us today, I invite you to join one of our upcoming sessions, which are available back on the agenda page. And I will drop a link to the chat in the chat for that right now. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.